On the line right now is our friend Lanny Davis. Lanny. We have so many questions I want to get you to weigh in on. First and foremost, later today, an IRS official named Lois Lerner, the person who sort of managed the release of this information regarding the IRS and the fact that they had been targeting members of the Tea Party and other conservative groups over the past years. She is apparently going to stand and take the fifth on advice of her attorney. She's not going to answer any questions before Congress today. What should we draw from that?
Well, look, the standard answer is everyone is entitled under the Constitution to do that, especially a congressional committee, which doesn't follow the rules of evidence and is really there just to make speeches and make you look bad. So good criminal lawyers will give that good criminal advice. I wish I knew more that I could say to Ms. Lerner, that given the really small chance that anything you testify to is going to be used against you unless you refuse to testify before the grand jury, and you literally refuse to testify in a courtroom, all of which is not good for someone who's a defendant. The chances that she's going to be prosecuted are so slim, and the chances that she would say something prejudicial. If I were her lawyer, I would try to work out a way with the committee so that she could testify. But I'm not her lawyer, and this is her Fifth Amendment right.
Okay, but I mean, you get the right clear, and if you're in a court of law to say you can make notice, draw no conclusions about this jury, this person has the right to claim the fifth, but in a public court of opinion, doesn't that have a different?
It always looks bad
Yeah.
to take the fifth, and that's the unfortunate part about the Fifth Amendment is that you could be innocent and you don't want to be trapped, so you take the fifth, but it looks like you have something to hide. And that's the reason why I vastly prefer working with clients that they testify. But I can't second-guess her lawyer. He may know more than I, and she may be in danger of criminal prosecution. But, again, I would prefer that she testify.
You know, Lanny Davis, we often get emails from some of our listeners saying, why do you have that Lanny on? He's just an apologist for the Democrats. But it's important for people to know.
That's why you have me on. You need a punching bag.
Oh, not at all. But, you know, you're more than that, though. People need to know that you are also an expert with crisis management. And when you were part of the Clinton White House as the counsel there, you definitely had to deal with crises. And when you look at what's going on right now in this White House and all of the various stories that are bubbling up, I don't want you to respond to each and every one of them, but putting your crisis management hat on, what would your advice be to Barack Obama in how to handle all of this? Is it time? Would it be a good political move for him to call for a special prosecutor so it sort of mitigates a lot of the congressional hearings?
No, I don't think a special prosecutor is needed now. I think the Justice Department can do its job, and I did that under the Bush administration when Democrats called for a special prosecutor. But I do think that the White House is very typical in being dominated by lawyers, including the President of the United States, whose legal brain is operating in not wanting to know about the investigation over at the IRS, even to be given a heads up, that's all, just a heads up, to prepare in a crisis management fashion the plan what happens as soon as this breaks. And I'm now told that not only did Ms. Rumler, who is an outstanding lawyer, but is thinking with the legal side of her brain, not want to give the president a heads up, but the chief of staff, for goodness sakes, Dennis McDonough, who isn't infected by a legal education as far as I know, should have told the president. It's the one person who has to know everything that Dennis McDonough knows.
Yeah.
It is even more amazing that the press hasn't reacted to the fact that the chief of staff decided to withhold that information from the President of the United States. So Crisis Management 101, they're just not doing very well, but 53% approval rating ain't bad.
They're not serving the president, though. Lanny, let me ask you this, though, really quickly. We had you on a couple of weeks ago, asked you about the Benghazi talking points, and you came down pretty hard on us and saying those talking points came from the CIA, and you said, are you accusing the CIA of doctoring those talking points? Now that we've seen the 12 revisions that the State Department had a huge hand in, can't you sort of ramp back on that a little bit and say clearly the State Department did change the narrative on Benghazi?
I swear I thought you were going to give me the final punchline of saying, finally, Lanny Davis is right. The answer is no,
God.
you're just not accurate. So let's look at the revisions. The one thing that's constant, you should at least give me this, is the word spontaneous and the words attacks were used, but then the words spontaneous attacks inspired by the Cairo protests. That was in version 1 to version 14.
Well, yeah, the reason
Susan
that's
Rice-
constant is
Susan
because
Rice
that's
did
the
not
narrative
make
they
that up.
wanted.
That came from the CIA.
Yeah, but Lanny, let's just
The story is
let's
everything
cut
that was
to the,
removed.
Cut to the bottom line here. You cannot deny that at the end of the process, the talking points were a lot less accurate than the original starting point. The starting point the CIA laid down was pretty much spot on, except for the one thing they got wrong was about the spontaneous, thing.
Look, it's a great concession by you to say the word spontaneous come from the CIA because all the Republicans in Congress were accusing Susan Rice of lying about the word spontaneous, consistent with
All
the
right.
Obama campaign narrative about the anti-Muslim videotape. Remember, after the word spontaneous came the word inspired by the Cairo protests. That was a CIA sentence. Now, the second thing on defense of the CIA, it was Michael Morrow, the deputy director of the CIA, an absolutely great man, who crossed out references to Al-Qaeda and the group that they thought
And we
was
know why,
involved.
too, don't we?
I don't know why.
Yes, we know why, because the
not driven by politics.
The State Department was raising holy unmitigated hell about it.
Well, your expression unmitigated hell, if you actually look at the words that were used in the emails, it wasn't unmitigated hell. It was concern about interfering with an investigation.
It was concern about protecting Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Let's just cut to the chase.
Lanny,
okay?
my partner Brian gets very worked up about this.
All right. I got.
Not driven by politics.
You're right.
Okay,
The
all
State
right. Yeah,
Department
right,
just
right.
politely asked them to
Yes,
remove
it was
They
all,
weren't giving them hell.
It had nothing to do with protecting the boss. Okay, so look, I have one more question.
It absolutely had nothing to do with protecting Hillary Clinton. I don't think
Yeah.
you mean that. If you think protecting Barack Obama, I think you could just give good faith to all the people involved here.
Yeah, I don't do
trying
that.
To figure out what happened, and the CIA was the originator and crossed out the words Al-Qaeda.
All right.
The White
Can
House,
I move
because
on? Can I move on,
accusation
please?
That I think you now agree was false.
Okay, I want to move on
No,
because I really, in the last few seconds that I have available, I want to get you to weigh in on the fact that the Department of Justice has named a reporter, James Rosen, with Fox News, and basically an unindicted co-conspirator, just so they could go and get a search warrant that is apparently very far and wide-reaching.
Look, if this were a Republican administration, I'd be raising my voice and denouncing the right-wing conspiracy against the media. I am very, very troubled by this decision, especially when I read the Rosen affidavit. Having said that, just as I assume good faith on the part of the State Department and the CIA when they turned out to be wrong about Benghazi, I assume good faith in the Justice Department's decision to do something so extraordinary, especially in a Democratic administration. But let's be fair. If it were a Republican administration, we Democrats would be all over the place shouting about, the right-wingers. And in this case,
Lanny.
we ought to concede that we're troubled by this broad subpoena, and especially the affidavit about Mr. Rosen troubles me greatly.
Hey, Lanny, we got to do traffic real fast, but can you just wait a minute because we got another question for
Yeah.
you. We continue with Lanny Davis on the line. Lanny, thanks for staying over.
Yeah, okay, Lanny. So here's the thing I want to ask you. Take the big picture for a moment. If you're a member of the Tea Party and you oppose the president, you find yourself being investigated by the IRS. If you are James Rosen and Fox News and you ask hard questions of this administration, really at times the only news organization that would ask hard questions, you find yourself investigated. Cheryl Atkinson of CBS News asked hard questions of this administration on Fast and Furious and Benghazi, and she says she has reason to believe that her computer has been compromised. Her home computer has been compromised. She thinks it may have something to do with the same thing that Rosen is going through. If you criticize this administration, you find yourself under investigation.
I'm off the reservation here. I love Eric Holder. He's a good friend of mine, and I'm receiving another phone call here, so I'm going to have to jump. But I cannot defend a subpoena of a reporter doing his job, and if it's Cheryl Atkinson, who I know well, she's one of the great reporters in Washington. This is really something I cannot imagine is justified, and I hope my friend Eric Holder looks into it.
All right, Lanny, I know we kept you late. You've got another call. Thanks for joining us today, as
You're
always.
welcome. Thanks for having me,
Lanny
guys.